Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Developers Zen podcast, where we talk about everything in the games industry, but from the eyes of developers. My name is Siavash, and joining me, my co-host is Sydney.
Hello.
Which I get it. It's hard to match my energy sometimes. I can just get into that hype mode. The 2013 YouTuber. hype thing that I always do. But hello, welcome to the third episode of our podcast. Well, it used to be, yeah. I mean,
2013 YouTuber hype, that's a thing?
Yeah, well, I went with 2013 because that's what I remember, but it's like just that era of YouTube where like gaming YouTube and vlogging and stuff was like becoming a thing, so people were like always, had this hype thing going on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I wasn't.
Every channel you like started watching and they would like just come in so hype at the start of it. Some people still do it and it works, I guess.
Too tired.
Yeah. Nah, that's
Too tired with life.
I think we all just got older, all those YouTubers just got older.
They're not 20-year-olds anymore. They're 35-year-olds now.
Yeah. So as we always do in our what we call the pre-podcast talk, where we try not to talk too much because we like to keep most of the stuff for when we're actually recording. We were going through a few different subjects to like see which one is the best one to cover today. And honestly, the one that keeps coming back is Tears of the Kingdom, because it's been consuming my time. Yeah, it's been consuming your time. It's been consuming everybody's time. And, not just from a Little Zelda fanboy, but from a developer. I saw things in that game running on a Switch that were just plain impressive. And we wanted to talk about them and say, like, essentially talk to you guys about why we think they're impressive and why we think it's like a feat of engineering to achieve something like that, especially on the Switch running. And
something
I feel bad for all the other games that came out this year because they're not going to get Game of the Year. Something
I had mentioned was that there were a lot of articles that came out right at the beginning of when Tears of the Kingdom came out of, developers say that, they don't understand how Tears of the Kingdom works and all these mechanics and developers can't figure it out. And I kind of that's kind of what I want to talk about. It's like, it's not that we can't figure it out. It's that we're just really impressed. There are things that they achieved that nobody's tried because we just knew it was going to be too hard. And I say we like we've been doing this for 20 years, but it's something that, like, as a developer, you look at and you're like, ugh, no.
See, there are two things.
Seems like a pain in the butt.
There are two things that I think go into why it's impressive. One is obviously the fact that it's running on a Switch. And
100%. Yeah.
Obviously, they are the first party company. What am I saying? First party company. It's the company, and they have access to like some low level stuff that they can pull with the system. But we'll go through that later. Go into that later. But the second, thing that I think is impressive about it is that it's not just the mechanics on their own. Like Ascend, why did nobody think about that before? It's such a simple mechanic, sure, but it's the mesh of all of them together. And how well it works with story, and how well it works with the world, and how it all works well together. I don't think there was any moment in that game where I thought, well, that mechanic is useless now, or like, oh, it was dumb that they added this because now this doesn't make any sense. It's been deprecated. It all just made sense, and just the fact that it leaves you so open to experiment, even like essentially cheesing a shrine or getting somewhere is part of the gameplay. That's like the part of it all.
What's impressive, and I think this is the thing that really needs to be pointed out, is that all of the variety isn't what's impressive, or the fact that it's working together isn't really at the heart of what's impressive. I think what's at the heart of it is actually something you and I were discussing the other day, which is fear of unpredictability.
Yeah.
When it comes to programming a system, as a programmer, you want it to be as predictable as possible. We need to be able to kind of figure out ahead of time what are all the things that players are going to come up with, and then how do we make sure that we are ready for that? How do we make sure the system is ready for that? What makes Tears of the Kingdom so impressive is the fact that they were able to leave it so open-ended that it allows for all of that creativity without breaking. So they didn't have to stick themselves in, this system has to be predictable. They designed the system specifically to be unpredictable, and then made sure it was robust enough that it wouldn't cause too many issues. Yeah, there's a little few bugs here and there, but not enough to cause problems. I think that's why everybody's so blown away by it, is because they leaned into the unpredictability rather than shying away from it.
Because, like, a lot of the abilities that you have in that game, or the things you can do, you might not consider attaching a rocket to a shield and ability, but it is going to deprecate, if you want to use the word deprecate, half of the shrines, because you can just like go up and then glide to the end of it. I've done that. But I saw the I mean, I can do it and it feels good.
Fuck your puzzle.
Yeah. But what's funny is that I was reading an article.
Great.
I was reading an article from the two directors and designers of Tears of the Kingdom, and the title of it was "Cheating is Fun."
Yeah.
And they kind of looked at it and they said, "Okay, this is completely ruins the shrine. I can't like complete this shrine from the puzzle perspective of it. But is it fun?" Yes, because the player had to figure that on their own, that they can just attach that together, and then they're just gonna feel so good and superior and just finish this. And it's fun.
The thing
and
is,
go and do it.
I never would have thought to do that.
Yeah.
Never. And this actually kind of goes into something we were discussing in our Q&A the other night. And so I'm going to say spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom, because I'm going to discuss one of the bosses. It's a big spoiler. Spoiler.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler. We're going to talk about Tears of the Kingdom bosses.
So specifically for this, I'm going to talk about the Rito boss. So if you haven't gotten to Rito yet, just skip this part. But there was a way to defeat that boss. There's a million ways to defeat that boss. And I think you were saying you were just shooting arrows at it. And Kevin, my partner, was shooting bombs at it. Way smarter. I dove through it.
You just dived through it, yeah.
Yeah, now granted that's riskier, honestly. Because I did, get hit quite a lot, but I had enough stuff and it was fine. But so okay, end of spoilers. But yeah, it's little things like, here's a bunch of different. It's Tears of the Kingdom is Legos. That's it. It's Legos. Yep. Like one of the most popular toys in the world, and it's popular because of how open-ended it is. And it's like they figured out how to make a Lego game.
What's interesting is that you could almost say that about all Zelda games, because inherently that's how they work. They give you a mechanic, and then there's a boss that like uses that mechanic. But it has never been this open. I'm going to say even Breath of the Wild was never this open, because we have the mechanic, and a lot of people love to talk about Ascend. A lot of people like to talk about Ultra Hand, but Fuse is such a crazy ability that allows you to, funny enough, if you're into the developer scene, especially for Unreal Engine, and especially for developers who are working on ARPGs or top-down RPGs and stuff like that, weapon creation is like the holy grail of indie dev, especially for the RPG stuff, because allowing the player to make weapons of their own is such a hard thing to do, because essentially you're allowing them to add items to the game, where inherently items are such a static thing in a game that you can't really make it dynamic.
I hadn't really thought of it that way.
What do you mean?
How did they make
the fuse thing?
How did they make that work?
So okay. Obviously,
I haven't even considered it.
For people who don't know how it works, essentially you have a weapon in your hand and you go into the fuse ability, and any dynamic item in the world, you can then attach it to your weapon. That can be an apple, that can be the same weapon again, and
Yeah.
that can be any of the
halberd is my
Zonai
favorite.
items. Yeah, yeah. I made a sword the other day, and it was pretty good. But you know what I like to talk about is such a small part of this. How do they get the name system to work?
Yeah.
Because they either manually named every single combination, or they came up with a system that names
program
it
that names it
automatically based on what you attach to what.
But my question actually was, how did they get the model to work? Because if you notice,
some stuff gets smaller, some stuff
exactly.
get attached completely.
Is it determined by what you're attaching the item to, or is it determined by what the item is? Because I was messing around the other day with some Lionel horns, and
they go completely on the weapon.
Depending on the weapon.
Oh.
If it's a spear, it gets attached to the end. But if it's a sword, it replaces the whole sword.
Yeah.
So I hadn't even thought about that. The
and
models
some items
alone,
just get attached to the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
the
the
models
system that
alone
they
are
have,
fascinating.
I think that the system they have is that they have a default where an item gets attached to the end of the other one. You know, not too hard to do. You just kind of attached it to different objects together. But I think they had special cases for some special combinations because they knew you were going to like fuse this to this. And then they made models specifically for those items.
I think the root has to be the item that the base. It has to be the weapon. Has to be the root that determines what happens.
Yeah. Probably.
And then I think there are some other back end things happening to what gets attached. So like there are some items, no matter what you attach it to, it gets smaller. So that's got to be in the item, not in the weapon.
Yeah, like there's a maximum of what the size can be.
Yeah, but I had until you
automatically.
said that, I hadn't even considered it. How
Now,
and then
what's
the naming
crazier-
convention, you're right too. Yeah.
What's crazier is that you do that stuff and the model changes. Now, you have to think about properties that gets applied once you do that. So the simplest thing is that you just get more damage and durability. But, for instance, if you grab a steak, if you shoot it with something that would freeze it, it would become frozen steak. And if you attach a frozen steak to a shield, then you can shield surf it without friction because it's riding on a frozen
ice.
steak.
Honestly, something even simpler that I was really stunned by is, so one of the weapons I had made was with a fire Lizalfo horn. And I put it on a sword. If I have that equipped and it's on my back, I can stand next to a pillar of ice and the pillar of ice will melt.
Yeah, and it keeps you warm if you
It's
were
just
cold
like-
before.
Yeah, and it's just like, what the fuck? Like,
it's
not even like, oh, the programming is impressive. What I'm really impressed by is the back end logistics of keeping track of all of that information on a Switch.
But it goes back to the unpredictability of it as well, which is
so it's got to be like, okay, this weapon always produces heat. Here are the things that always respond to heat nearby. And then basically the code would be anything that's equipped, even whether it's in your hand or not, always gives off that ability. So it's really, I guess it is simple when you think about it, but just the fact that it was so robustly kept track of to allow that open-endedness. You know, okay, this thing is always slippery. This thing doesn't create friction. Like, it's the fact that they put all those conditions within the different things that you can do. It's crazy. The other one, I was really, I guess we're just talking about the different mechanics and how cool they are, but the other one that I really couldn't figure out or wrap my head around was how they got the reverse time thing to work.
Good one. You know, I cheesed a lot of puzzles using that.
Oh, same.
Did you know, like,
same.
if you can't reach something, use Ultra Hand, hold it high up.
Yeah.
And then go
get on
down
top of it
and just get on top of it, and then it will bring it up too.
But how do you think they did it?
So I'm going to actually this is one that I thought about, because you can see that line of where it's moving. I think, and this is such a crazy thing to say, but I think everything that is close enough to you, they keep track of his movement, like it's path of movement. And then that's how
Actually,
they draw the path, and then when you
you know
click
what I
on it,
just
it just goes
realized?
back through it.
There's a tiny little mechanic that I don't think anybody has talked about or thought about or realized that you get from Robbie. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I've gotten all of them, so you talking about the travel medallion?
No. I'm talking about the tracker.
Oh, the path of adventure path. I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, it tracks your path that you've taken.
Yeah. Through the whole
I
game,
will
yeah.
bet you $100 that they did the whole time mechanic and then realized, oh shit, Link's getting tracked during this too. We should probably show that to the player. They might be interested in that. I guarantee you that's where
what's
that
funny,
little
though-
mechanic came from. They're like, oh, we're already tracking the location for everything constantly. Let's show the player where Link
What's
is.
funny though is that they had that in Breath of the Wild though. They had that as a DLC in Breath of the Wild. The last DLC that came
Okay.
out for Breath of the Wild had that in it. So I wager that they've
Maybe it's the
already
other
been
way
working on
around.
that. Or maybe it's the other way around.
Maybe
Yeah,
they
yeah.
did the Link tracker like, oh, we could track every item this way. And then it's, oh, if we can track
go
every
back to
item, maybe we can reverse its movement. Oh, I'll bet you that's what happened. Yeah. I'll bet
Yeah.
you, because I remember there was an interview with one of the two guys. I can never remember their names. About how they came up with the ascent mechanic.
Oh yeah,
Did you hear about this?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it
The
was
one
just-
that
they
it was a
came up
debug
with the-
tool.
Yeah, they came up with the depths first and didn't want to get out. It was a pain. And in the interview, he said, how cool would it be if I could just go through the ceiling? And then there you go. It's a whole mechanic for the game. So I bet you that's how they came up with that time mechanic. Is it was already a DLC for Link. We're already tracking everything. Or we're already tracking him. Let's track everything. Let's see what we can play with it. And that kind of goes into the inherent creativity that comes in game development. Like, because especially with something like Tears of the Kingdom, which feels so organized and thoroughly planned. But then you hear about those little stories and you kind of realize that even if you have robust pre-production, we're still always cobbling things together as they come along.
Oh, absolutely. You know what's interesting is that Miyamoto said something about why what was the game that he thought was a flop, like what was a flop game that he's worked on. And he said that I don't think any of the games that I worked on were like a failure, but the game that I'm not proud of, or I think we could have done a lot more, was Zelda 2 Adventures of Link, was it called?
I think so.
And he said the reason that it failed, and he actually is like the black sheep of the whole franchise, is because we stuck to the pre-production and we didn't do any of those innovations that we do when we actually get down to making it.
There you go.
That was an interesting thing that kind of
That's
shook
really
me a little bit.
interesting,
I was
yeah.
like, because like, you know, going through making our game, whenever like we've done so much of this, like, so we didn't have much of a pre-production. There was some of it, but like pretty much all of it got deprecated through the development because we came up with so many more mechanics and so many better ways to approaching something. But
And
it just
better
kind
ways to combine things.
of better
I
ways to
think.
combine things. So
Yeah.
like, we looked at a system and we're like, oh, this, what were we thinking when we designed this? But wait, we can like change this one thing about it, and then the whole thing is gonna work with the rest of it. But it kind of verified my fears that like game development is inherently validated it. Yeah. That game development is inherently super dynamic, and that's just like part of the whole thing. That's like how it should be. That's how you end up animating and making good games.
Yeah.
Now, having a robust blueprint from the start is a very good idea, but if it needs to change, it has to change.
Well, I think too, the thing that you and I've figured out the most is, maybe it's I've figured it out and I've forced it on you, but if we already have a system that does 90% of the things that we need to do, let's not make a whole new system to do the other thing. Let's just use this system and change it so that we can make the next system, which is we literally just had this conversation about the special events and stuff.
Yeah.
Why make something new when we could just use what we already have and just tweak it slightly? And I feel like that's probably what they've been doing too, is why make something new when we can just make this and make it seamlessly work with this, and then now you've got a whole new system. So
Well, if you want to like go back to Tears of the Kingdom, Ultra Hand is inherently magnesis, but
oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
you know, much more advanced and with fusing stuff.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that one thing that a lot of people were worried about Tears of the Kingdom was the fact that they were using the same Hyrule. So
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I was worried about that.
I could be wrong, but I think Tears of the Kingdom is the first Zelda game that there are like very short amount of time between the previous entry and this one in terms of game time. There's like 5-6 years between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom.
I think
Because usually Legend of Zelda is an anthology.
the
Each
only
one
thing
is its
I
own thing.
think that might not be the case. Are you just talking about time between games?
Time between, like, lore-wise.
Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
because it's like a couple years.
Because, you know, you have the Hero
And
of
it's
the
in the same
Twilight and
universe.
Hero of Time and Hero
They've
of...
never done that.
And they're all different.
They've never put them in the same timeline
Yeah,
before.
they never made a
That's new.
sequel, essentially.
no.
It's always been like whole new world.
New
Yeah.
universe.
New universe. So because they did that, and people were worried about the fact that this is the same Hyrule, but as soon as the game came out, people started playing it. I think all of those worries just completely went away and were replaced by, again, being stunned by how impressive that is.
Yeah.
Because it's a familiar world, but it's a completely different way of approaching it. Because you have a completely different tool set, there are different things around you, and not only you are using the new rules and playing with the new rule set, but your enemies and all the stuff that you interact with are also got all those rule sets. And it makes Breath of the Wild look like a tech demo compared to
It
Tears of the
really
Kingdom.
does. If we're talking about maps and map design, I was worried about, not really worried, I was curious. Okay, if we're going to have, you know, the whole same map, right? And we knew there was going to be a Sky City or something.
Yeah.
Because you could see that from the posters and stuff. So it was like, okay.
Yeah, that was a big selling point.
You could have Sky Islands. There wasn't a single point where I thought that the Sky Islands was going to run the entire breadth of the map. I just never considered it. So I was like, okay, it's like the old map plus 25%, maybe 30%. That's cool, you know? That's what they did with Skyward Sword. So it wasn't really anything new or impressive. Like, they had the Sky Islands and the ground in Skyward Sword. So it was like, okay, cool. We can dive, we can go back up. Neat. What blew everybody's mind, and I think this actually goes down to more of a marketing thing than creative production, but what blew everybody's mind was the depths, because nobody knew about that. Even the people in media who got to play the game, all they showed them was the different mechanics you'd be able to use. Nobody knew. And so suddenly, I remember I'm running around, you know, playing the game, and Kevin and I'm impatient. I wasn't going to wait for Kevin to finish the game. So we both bought it. So we have two copies.
Playing at the same time.
And we were playing at the same time. And which that's a whole other conversation about how much fun that was. But, you know, I was terrified of those giant red cavern things. I'm like, I'm not going.
The chasms.
I'm not going anywhere near that. That is horrifying. And Kevin, being the weirdo he came up on one. First thing he did was jumped into it. I was like, absolutely not. And I was like waiting and waiting and waiting. And I waited until the story told me to go
you get
check
that
out.
quest from Josha.
Yeah, and
Josha, yeah.
What blew my mind was the fact that, I mean, I think a lot of people know by now that the depths are inverted, so it's an inverted map, which is cool. But what I'm impressed by isn't even the fact that they made it or managed to fill it with stuff. I'm impressed by the fact that they have 3 freaking maps. running on a Switch.
Yep.
That's what blows my mind. It's holy crap! Like
we talked
and the
about
fact
this a
that
lot.
they kept that from us.
Yeah, so okay, that's actually what I was going to talk about. So you and I talked a lot about the fact that they didn't show anything to do with depths in any of the marketing stuff.
They hardly showed anything in marketing.
Yeah, I was going through the trailer number 3, and I was watching people's reactions because it was pretty impressive. It's the one with the crazy music with the sax and everything coming in. They show depths in that one.
But nobody knew.
There's
nobody
like
knew what it was.
a quick pan shot of it that lasts for like 3-4 seconds, and then it's like with the beat of the music gets changed. But
it's enough
the
to look
context.
like a dungeon.
It's enough to look like a dungeon. And also, you know what? They showed Yonobu's the Dungeon of Fire. Not dungeon. The Shrine of Fire. They show that one, which is
I call
Death
him
Mountain.
Goro.
Oh, Goro. Because he says Goro at the end of everything.
Yeah, his name's just Goro to me.
Yeah, that's fair. But the Fire Shrine, they show footage of that, and a few people said, "Oh, dungeons, yeah, you can go," and it looks like it's under it's like an underworld. But again, nobody expected that the entirety of the overworld exists there, because the sky is not nearly as impressive as the depths is. And you know, just today I was playing a little bit, and I got my last light route. So I got 120 light routes. I got all of them for the depths. I can see the whole map now. But it's crazy. And you know, you said yourself with the fact that they flipped the map. That's such a good idea. Did you know?
It's really smart. Save time.
Anywhere there's a light route, there's a shrine above it.
Yeah.
And the names are inverted.
Yeah, actually,
I figured that out on my own, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
Funny story about that, and then I'm going to go into talking about the marketing stuff.
Yeah.
So the light route shrine thing, I was running around doing something, and so Kevin, again comparing our gameplay, Kevin ignored everything on the overworld. The first thing he wanted to do was get every light route. So he took his time, and he just went through in the darkness and just went and grabbed all the light routes. And I told him, I said, I am terrified of the depths. I'm terrified of the dark. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to go on the overworld. I said, I'm going to go on the overworld and find all the shrines. And then from there, I'll use that to go find the light routes. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I went, wherever there's a shrine, there's a light route. And he goes, how do you know that? I said, freaking Robbie tells you.
Oh, does he?
Yes. And this just goes to show that gamers don't read anything.
That's true.
But no, in that storyline, when you go down and you talk to Robbie in the depths the very first time, he says, "Oh, did you notice that there's a shrine right above this light route?"
Yeah.
He literally says that, and it's like, and then you're, oh, okay, cool, yeah, there's shrine light route, cool. So not gonna go look for him in the dark because that's stupid. So I'm gonna go tag all of them on the upper world, and then I'm playing slow. But in terms of the marketing, and that's kind of something I want to talk about, was the genius of how they marketed everything. They didn't really announce that they were making another game. It was really like, oh, we just know that there's one coming. But there wasn't really a formal announcement until they were ready. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
People knew they were going to make one long before they officially announced it. I'm getting a weird cramp.
And even the first time they actually had a official trailer, there was no name drop. I don't think. I could be wrong.
No, I think the name was
people
dropped.
just thought it was going to be DLC.
People were calling it Breath of the Wild 2.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess it kind of is.
It
kind of is. But I think the name drop might have been the second trailer. I think it was teaser, and then I don't know. But what I wanted to point out was all of the marketing really leaned on the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even the cover of it is the sky. So you kind of got this sense of light, and that's what it's going to be. And they really leaned into that positive aspect. But 90% of the game is the depths.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so,
Tears of the Kingdom is definitely very dark and gloomy.
exactly, but
Especially
the
compared to
fact
Breath of the
that they marketed, how do I phrase this? They marketed it in a way to get people to buy it without spoiling the adventure of discovery.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm impressed by, because that's been my biggest fear, and you and I have had a million arguments about this, is how do we...
I'm getting more convinced the more I play Tears of the Kingdom.
How do we let people know that there's this cool, exciting thing that we want them to play without spoiling the adventure of discovering it? And I could do a TED talk on good and bad trailer design. But what it comes down to is if you give away too much, you get rid of that sense of discovery. And for a game like Legend of Zelda, which is inherently about adventure.
Yeah, and discovery.
That's the whole point of the game. If you do your marketing wrong, you can literally kill the game. And I'm so impressed by the fact that they leaned into something that, let's be honest, really isn't that cool of a part of the game. The Sky Islands are whatever. But that's what they marketed it for. It was enough for people to go, oh, that looks fun, and to buy it. But are you disappointed that the Sky Islands aren't as cool? I'm not.
You know? There's another aspect of the marketing, and this is actually kind of opposite of what you were saying. So I'm going to talk about stuff that they actually showed and is in the game. Is the fact that Tears of the Kingdom, at least to me, looks like the narrative, first of all, much more of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it looks like it's a lot more fleshed out and polished.
Yeah.
Like, again, I'm going to say Breath of the Wild seemed like a ramp to get to Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
And, in the third trailer again, the one that came a month before the game was released, they show Ganondorf and, his
Sexy
full
Ganondorf.
glory for the first time. Yeah. And people go crazy as soon as they see him. And, there's voice acting and there's, cutscenes and everything's happening.
But there's not just any voice acting.
They got Matt Mercer for it.
Yeah, I mean, they knew what they were doing when they went and grabbed Matt for that.
And I'm so happy for Matt because Matt Mercer, he mentioned somewhere that he always wanted to do Ganondorf. He never thought he could, but yeah, he got it, and he did a fantastic job.
Oh, he killed it! Absolutely killed it.
Yeah, but yeah, that was a part of the trailer that they really kind of honed on, and in that same trailer they even teased Rauru, and nobody has any idea who Rauru even is at that point. They're like, oh, who's this new guy? And yeah, I don't think I personally didn't expect it to get this much narrative, this many side quests, this many. They have side quests and then side adventures and stuff like that.
Which
I didn't
honestly,
expect to have this much story in the world.
I'm glad for. But the thing is, how hard it is to make a good narrative. And I'll be totally honest, I don't even think the narrative is really that great. I think it's okay. I mean, true, but so far, not so much that it's not good. It's just it's okay. It gets the job done. Yeah, and it's interesting.
Me, the ending, in my opinion, takes over.
I did go and I got all the tiers because that was the very first thing that I wanted to do. I was like, this story, I want it, and I went and chased all those down, and they're interesting and good. I wanted more, honestly, but
did you get the last tier?
I think so, yeah. But I've gotten all the tiers. Yeah. But I think compared to, I have the sword and everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm 90% done. I just am taking my time. But where was I going with that? Oh, I don't think narrative has ever. No, I don't want to say that because that's horrible. Narrative in Legend of Zelda has always been important, but not important to the other Legend of Zelda games. Does that make sense?
Right. So do you mean that narrative takes a backseat compared to gameplay in Zelda games?
No, I mean that the narrative is individual to that game.
Right.
And how they all tie together was an afterthought.
Ah, yes. I see what you mean now.
I think this is the first time that they're finally stepping into it and going, okay, we need to tie all these games together. And what it feels like to me, and I could be totally wrong on this, is it feels like this is a retcon so that they can start from scratch with a new story that goes across multiple games that they've planned and that they've established an actual conventional lore for. I think that's part of it, looking back and going, I wish we planned that better and put these games together better.
I mean, that makes sense, considering Breath of the Wild was essentially a relaunch of how Zelda looks for the new generation.
Yeah, but we don't have too much more time, so I don't want to, I could probably go on about marketing and narrative and stuff forever, but what I did want to talk about was actually kind of back to the depths and stuff, but specifically talking about level design. And again, I think it's something that enough people aren't talking about. Everybody wants to talk about the mechanics and how cool they are and all that stuff, but there are little tiny things that were done so much better in Tears of the Kingdom than in Breath of the Wild that I think makes it a better game. And I just kind of want to talk about them. And I think one of the big ones is level design. And so going back to talking about Rito Village, again, spoilers for Rito. If you're playing Tears of the Kingdom and you haven't done Rito yet, get your shit together.
That's the first one.
It's the first thing. Just go do it. But what I was really impressed by was with all of the shrines, if you will, the bosses or whatever from Breath of the Wild, you do one, you've done all of them. They're not really interesting. There's not really a lot going on. It's just kind of repetitive, and you're like, all right, I'll just go and get this real quick and whatever.
They were a lower, like, a part of the game I didn't really care too much.
They felt like an afterthought, honestly.
Yeah. The Divine Beasts.
The Divine Beasts. Whereas with this, you can tell they put a hell of a lot more effort into making them interesting and unique. And what I really liked about the one for Rito Village, again, spoilers, is I didn't know it was happening. I didn't realize I was going into this big boss battle until I was already like halfway through it. And I went, oh shit, this is a big deal. When you're going through all those little islands, because it was so seamless.
Yeah.
It was just like, little bird dude's like, I'll go with you. And you're like, all right, cool, let's go check this out. And the next thing you know, you're like in it and like, oh shit. So, but I was saying this in our Q&A the other day. I panic so easily with anything adventure Zelda related. I freak out. And the fact that I was able to go through that whole thing of Sky Islands, not only did I not die once, like, I had so much fun just jumping into I didn't die a single time, and I was so proud of myself, but like jumping into the ships and then getting launched up and sailing to the next thing and jumping into a ship, and like, that was so clever. And it was so well designed and so well thought out. And there wasn't a single point where I was like, oh, I feel like they could have spaced this better, or I didn't feel like I had enough time, or I felt overly rushed. It was just such a smooth, like, little adventure that I was so impressed. It was so good. And then you get up into the actual boss, and you're at one of the highest points on the map, and you're fighting this giant thing in the air. And it was just like, and I wasn't freaking out. And the fact that they could make something that is inherently terrifying, which is falling, and just, it's not a big deal. That whole boss battle was just insanely impressive.
I think
Colgera. Go ahead.
I think Colgera easily beats all the other bosses for the shrines.
Oh, hands down.
For the most epic one. Yeah.
Epicness, yeah. I think I was saying, I still haven't figured out which one was my favorite. I really... All right, we're going to talk about the shrines a little bit now. So...
shrines or skip. Temples?
Temples, sorry. Talk about temples.
Yep.
I really enjoyed the mechanics of the water temple.
Yeah. No, I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
the floatiness of it.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the times with the temples, especially with the divine beasts, it felt like such a chore and a task, having to run through and get all these things. And I hated the divine beasts, and I hated doing them. I knew that there was going to be a boss fight at the end of them, and I hated the boss fights in that game. They stressed me out. I never felt like I was having a good time. And there wasn't a single boss in Tears of the Kingdom where I died. And for me, that's a big ass deal. That I can just have fun and not have to be freaking out. But it was just the right amount of difficult that I could still have fun. You know, and because they did difficulty by mechanics rather than speed and time and reaction time, which I feel like is always how boss battles work. It's like, how good's your reaction time? Bro, my reaction time sucks. And I don't want to feel like an idiot because I can't hit a button fast enough. You know, I don't have good dexterity and I don't have good muscle control. So the fact that I could have fun, you know, then you've got the big moth motherfucker from the
the
desert.
Gibdo Queen.
Yeah, that sure.
Yeah.
I think that whole one was probably the one I liked. No, actually, the one that I hated was the Goron one. I did hate that one.
The Goron one, yeah, I died a lot on that one. And
yeah.
I actually, okay, I liked how
frustrating.
clever the shrine was.
It was
temple
clever.
was.
It was clever.
But it was a frustrating temple for me. Yeah. And then we have, for the water one, we had Moktarok. And it was the guy with the shark. It was just silly.
The whole shrine was goofy. You got the bubbles and the floatiness and all the weird muckiness, and the whole thing was just weird, and I think that's why I liked it. But I was terrified that it was going to be some kind of an underwater battle.
Right, yeah.
For anybody who doesn't know, I'm thalassophobic. I'm terrified of darkness and water. Not my thing. And I don't like giant fish. So
that's fair.
I was really worried that the water boss was going to be a giant sea monster. I was really stressed out about it. And the fact that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And not only was it not, it was just goofy and fun.
It was goofy, yeah.
Power to you guys at Nintendo. It's a fun ass game without hitting on like all the fears that I think have been poked by previous Zelda games. I used to hate playing Zelda games because there were always freaking spiders in them.
Yeah.
Hated
we
it.
had them since like before Ocarina of Time, and
there's always been spiders. Breath of the Wild was the first time there were no spiders. And I love
thank
that.
God. Yeah. Before we get too far from it, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the music.
Yeah. Back to level design.
Why I think it's superior from Breath of the Wild, and it's done so well in this game. So,
which music specifically?
Well, I'm going to jump around the place quite a bit, but I'm going to start actually talking about Rito Village, because the very first time that you come across Rito,
it's so sad.
Obviously, it's all covered in snow. You don't really find many adults around because they have gone away to do other stuff.
It's so
It's just kids running the shops. And then the music hits you. And it is, the Dragon Roost mix for the Rito Village theme. And it's... what's interesting about that track is that we have our, day version of the Rito Village theme. Very happy, very bright. It uses... it uses instruments especially that like feel warm, and then at night it goes down into a different key that is a little bit like more mellow sounding, to kind of say that everybody's going to sleep, everybody's slowing down.
Does that remind you of anything?
Wait, what?
That's what we did.
Oh yeah. Well, why do you think we did that? Yes. There's a reason. Yeah, we slow down, we go down to a different key of the same song. But for the snow one, they go to even a sadder tone and a key. Now, what's interesting about it is that it's not just, a completely different key from the two other songs. It always, when the melody plays, it always misses a few tones. It's almost like, you're looking
It's
around the
empty.
Rito village and there are no like
It feels
people
empty.
around. It feels empty because
Yeah.
you're waiting for that final note to hit, but it never does, and the
Yeah.
song just goes and continues. And that when I heard that song, I had to legitimately pause because I was getting emotional.
Yeah.
And
Rito
and
is
then-
rough, man.
Rito was rough.
It's rough.
Yeah. And then when you get into the boss battle, what's interesting is that you're in Wind Temple.
Yep.
So the main instrument of the songs are all woodwinds. They're like flutes and stuff. It's all windy instruments. And then they hit you with the main part of the Rito Village theme as in the middle of it. What do you call it? Choir? The choir bit of it when they're like singing it. And oh my god, just being in the air, hearing that play with the Tulin next to you and just shooting this enemy. And that's why I say, in terms of
Yeah, it's
presentation,
good.
nothing beats that one. Maybe the final boss, which we can't talk about today, unfortunately, because Sunny
No.
hasn't got to
I
it.
haven't
But
played it yet.
I think that is the best thing, and then after that. But now the other thing I want to talk about music is that Breath of the Wild missed the classic Zelda theme a lot. Like there wasn't much of it anywhere. There's only the only thing I remember is that when you go to Kakariko Village at the start and they're explaining to you
I
what
love
Calamity
that
Ganon
sound.
is, yeah, it plays it like just a tiny bit of the classic theme a little bit. But in Tears of the Kingdom, they play it multiple times and they really pull at your heartstrings.
No,
Have you... God, is this going to be a spoiler for you?
I don't know.
Have you gotten
Have I finished Kakariko?
all the sages?
No.
All the sages.
No.
Okay.
I'm
So you're
working
still
on the
missing.
last one.
Okay.
I
You're missing...
know who it is. I'm in the temple right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah,
So
I'm working on getting it.
okay. What was her name? God.
Nope, don't say it.
Well, you should know it.
I know it, but if there's anybody else who hasn't gotten to that point, it is
all
a
right.
spoiler.
Well,
So
right. So there's
it was
a memory.
spoiled for me, and I was a little
Okay.
upset about it. So
There's a memory in there that you get at the end of it. Have you gotten that yet?
oh no, now
Right.
I'm
There's a memory you get
excited.
at the end of it there. And then that is, I think, the best memory. Maybe
Oh.
besides the one that you get at the end of all of
Now I'm
Tears of
excited.
the Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah.
That one is a really good one, but then this one I think but there's a moment in that memory, and I'm trying to talk as non-spoilery as possible, that one of the people in that cutscene say remember his name, and they're talking about Link. And then as soon as they say remember his name, it plays the classic theme.
Oh,
And
now
oh
I'm
my
looking forward to
god.
this.
Like all the hair on my body just like it's
Now,
crazy. And they
okay,
play it
I
a
wanna
few
talk
other
about-
times as well, and it really hits you in the emotions.
I want to talk about sound design,
Mhm.
but
Well, clicking
not-
and clacking of everything.
not the positive stuff.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
so
Oh, you mean by not the positive stuff, you mean stuff that aren't happy, right? Not
Yes.
stuff that are done bad.
yes, 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 yes.
Just yes.
So okay, so going back down to the depths, right?
Yep.
That whole area scares the crap out of me.
Mm. Well, it's scary.
I'm almost maxed hearts. I'm maxed out stamina already. I've got enough stuff. The depths are not difficult for me.
Yep.
I'm fine. I can go through there. It still scares the crap out of me because it's just freaking black.
Mm.
And I really struggle going through that area because of how terrifying it is. Because for somebody who's afraid of the dark, it's really dark down there.
Is the silence scary to you?
It's not silent. That's the problem. So the part of what makes it so horrifying is the sound design in the depths. And I can't really describe it because I got to a point where I do play it on mute now. Because I
Okay.
found that muting it makes it easier for me to get through. There's
So what
something
sounds...
there's something in the sound design that is inherently just hits at like the deepest parts of your fear factors. And I don't know if there's like the Mass Effect Reaper noise?
Yeah. The
There's
little
a
horn sound.
tiny bit of that
Right.
that plays in the depths.
Ooh.
It's not as loud and it's not as intense, and the notes aren't as sharp. It's kind of spread out, but it plays down there.
Are you talking about the horn sound that plays when you dive into it?
That also
Where you're
scares
diving
me,
and it goes.
but no,
"Woo."
but no,
Yeah, okay.
but that sound plays within the background noise
Right. Okay.
of the depths, and so you hear it kind of. It's like just this slow, subtle, like vibration that makes you feel like you're not in an empty space. It makes you feel like there are things here and you just can't see them.
You just can't see them.
And I don't like that. And
well,
so
that's a very true description of the depths.
it's true, and they designed that sound so well. There's like a rustling sound too. So all of the sound down there makes it feel like you're in a dark room and you're surrounded by monsters. Which is good. I mean, that's what they were going for, but for somebody like me, that is way too much. So
and you know the music
I just
as well.
mute it. The music's great too, but yeah, so I mute it
it's
now
just a
and I
few
don't
notes.
listen.
It's just a few notes, but what's interesting is that, again, the key that they play at makes you feel that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You just inherently feel that there is something wrong
It just
down
feels
here.
bad.
It just feels bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, it feels also, you know what's another interesting thing that I got from the depths? Now, I know there's lava down there, but most of the time I feel cold. Like, just get
You
the
yourself
feeling that
feel
I'm
cold?
yeah, when I'm like in the depths in the game, I feel like I'm feeling cold. Like I need to warm up or cozy up or go somewhere that is not warm and cozy.
I don't feel that. I think because the very first time I went into the depths was near lava. And so to me it's inherently hot. Because that was my first experience. I didn't go into the depths the first time through Robbie.
Yeah.
I went down the first time through the story. Well, I won't go.
So that would be
saying that.
yeah.
That's how I ended up down there. And I went down there and I went, what the hell is this? Get me the hell out of here. And then Kevin was like, you need to go talk to Robbie. I was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to Robbie. And then I did that part of it first because I just completely bypassed that. I didn't realize it was a thing. But again, with sound and with music and with freaky things that they managed to do, those damn gloom hands.
Yeah. No one likes gloom hands.
I didn't even know they existed. And then I was running on a very steep hill, and I was at the top of it, and there were gloom hands like down here. I couldn't even see them. All I know is the sky went dark and the music changed, and I lost my shit. And I was like, I don't know what's happening, but get me the hell out of here. And then I saw something like moving out of the corner of my eye, and all my Doctor Who alarm bells went off. And I went, nope. And I got the hell out of there. And then it happened again later. I was on the plateau, and fuck that place. Like every corner, something's trying to kill you up there.
Yeah.
And I was just running through the forest of spirits, reminiscing about playing Breath of the Wild, having a grand old time, and out of
trying to
nowhere,
get to the Shrine of Resurrection.
No, I wasn't even trying to do that. I was just having fun. I'm like, I see. Kind of, yeah. I was like, let's check out if the old stuff is still here.
Yeah.
Spoiler, it is. And I was very excited when I finally found it. But yeah, so I was just running through the forest, looking at trees, whatever. And again, sky goes dark, music changes, and I still didn't know what this thing was. I turned the camera, and as I panned the camera, one of the hands came up between Link and the camera. Scared the ever-loving shit out of me. And again, I just noped the hell out of there. I was like, I don't want anything to do with this. And I took off. It wasn't until I watched Kevin actually fight them that I was like, okay, I got this. And then I was forced to later and blah, blah, blah. But it took me seeing somebody else do it to be like, oh, that's not so bad. But that music, man, like, now that I even knowing how to kill them, like,
and you know, when there's a blood moon, You almost get
Oh,
scared that there's going to
fuck the
be
blood
hands
ring.
around.
That's fair.
But
yeah.
I look up and I'm like, oh yeah, no,
Oh,
there's
it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
The worst was running into them in the depths.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because
Didn't like
of the
that.
darkness. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like that at all.
It doesn't help. Yeah.
I immediately
And I mean,
paused and muted everything, and then I went back to it. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you guys aren't so bad without the music."
without spoiling anything, try defeating them, but be ready for what might come next after the hands go away.
Just
Yeah.
be prepared.
Just be prepared. Yeah. We are running a little bit, kind of over
Pretty
to an
okay.
hour now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Do we want to pause here and then do our extended version?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, thank you
We
all
should do
to...
an outro for everybody who did say it. In the last one, we didn't do an outro.
Oh yeah, we'll do an outro.
We need an outro for the basic one.
Thank you to everybody for listening to us literally rant about how
Tears of the
good
Kingdom.
Tears of the Kingdom is for like an hour. But I hope that we actually talked about some developer insights.
Yeah.
It's not just listening to your friend talk about their favorite game for so long. But thank you all for listening to us. If you would like to check out more episodes of our podcast, you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. It's a Developers Den podcast. And on YouTube, we will be at RainyGames. So, yeah. And if you'd like to join our server, there's a Discord server, discord.gg/SunnySide. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if you want to see what we're working on as game developers, so our studio is RainyGames, if you haven't figured that out. We're working on our first game right now called SunnySide. It's a JRPG farm sim. So if you go through our YouTube, go through our Discord, we're on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, and I'm on Blue Sky now. So we'll see how that goes, eh? But yeah, if you want to see more what we do as developers, definitely check out RainyGames, check out SunnySide. And yeah, thanks for hanging out with us. I hope that we can give some kind of insight instead of just more fanboying of, oh, Tears of the Kingdom is so great. But like, why is it great? Why do we think that? So I hope we were able to give you guys some stuff to chew on.
And if you'd like to listen to the extended version of this and our other podcast episodes, you can support us on Patreon on patreon.com/RainyGamesUK. And yeah, we have a bunch of tiers over there. And yeah, thank you all for listening to us, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye.